My interest in microscopy goes back many decades. As a matter of fact, in 1960, where 60 years ago, I got a paper route to buy this microscope right here. And this microscope is the Lafayette Radio and Electronics microscope of 1200 power. Here's the original Lafayette Radio Electronics catalog from 1961. And believe it or not, I was able to find one on eBay. Here it is. Page 311 is the 1200 power researcher for $44.50. Comes with a nice box with some tools in it. A very similar microscope was available for $10 less, and it only came with 3 eyepieces instead of 4, so it only went up to 900 instead of 1200. It had the same objectives. It didn't have a mechanical stage like this one did, but when I bought that microscope, of course I had a paper route. It took me a long time to save up the $44. As a matter of fact, I think my parents might have helped me with a few dollars to buy this thing. But I was thinking way back of all the microscopes that I've owned since then, where I've ended up with these beautiful instruments here, an Olympus CH2, and over here that we have a Bristoline, which I understand is an offshoot of Olympus, who knows, and I have a very inexpensive stereoscope for doing close work that doesn't require a lot of resolution or magnification. But this microscope was very unusual, I thought, for the time, considering the price of $44. My God, nothing compared to today. And it has 4 objectives: a 5, a 10, a 40, and a 60. And it had 4 eyepieces. It had the 5 power, the 10, the 15, and the 20. And the 20 is P20, which means periplanatic. I think it means wide field. Fancy term for wide field. We'll put that in there to prevent the dust from going in. So the seller claimed that this microscope was in an estate sale and came in this really nice box. This is the original box. As you can see, it has tools here. It has a spatula, scalpel, tweezers, pair of scissors, and some kind of gizmo. Still wrapped up in the original plastic, believe it or not. And we have a little thing here where you can store some slides. You know, I suppose it's called the researcher. I suppose they wanted to conjure up an image of somebody owning this microscope and going out into the field and gathering whatever. But Lafayette Radio and Electronics very surprisingly had an immense amount of accessories for these microscopes. They sold stain sets, all kinds of stain sets. They sold prepared microscope slides. They had a mechanical stage that you could add to this. I know because a friend of mine at the same time I bought this couldn't afford the extra $10, bought the 900 power, but his dad felt sorry for him and ended up buying a mechanical stage, just like we have on the modern microscopes. This one, by the way, does have a mechanical stage of sorts. If you can see these knobs here, these knobs move the stage just a little bit, left or right, up or down if you jiggle them the right way. It's not as great a range as the mechanical stages on the newer microscopes or the more expensive one, but at the higher power, certainly it moved the slide around just enough where you could move it over to what you would look at. And it didn't have a diaphragm like they have on the modern microscopes, like you would expect on a camera, infinitely variable. It was just a disc with holes pierced into it of different sizes to let different amounts of light through. It worked well enough. I never seemed to think that this was necessary because I was always trying to find a good light source using this flat mirror or the concave mirror. But certainly this microscope fulfilled all of my needs as a young teenager. So exciting to have something that magnified 1,200 times as opposed to 900. Like I said, you know, as a young boy, more is always better. So the 1,200 was what I wanted. And the 1,200 was achieved by the 60 power times 20, as opposed to the 900 power, which was the 60 power objective times 15. Now, the interesting thing about this microscope, I suppose I'm a little biased because I owned it, but the image quality was quite good compared to what I would have expected for a $44 microscope. So I really got spoiled as a teenager with a really good beginner's microscope. Now, this microscope, the 60, they say times the 10 or the 15, has enough resolution in the objective to actually see the nuclei of cells. I'm not sure how much more you would really need for a microscope, but it certainly had the resolution to see intercellular structures like the nuclei, you know, and it was very impressive. Of course, the newer microscopes that I have, the Olympus, far better field of view, resolution, and just overall image quality. But as a beginner's microscope, this was quite impressive. So we have the 5, the 10, the 15, and the 20 power eyepieces. Now, I remember I was cleaning, this was 60 years ago, this would be in 1960. I was cleaning this eyepiece and some alcohol got inside, in between. This lens here is cemented with another one, and it got in between it and ruined it. Luckily, I was able to get a replacement eyepiece. I forget how much it was, but I was really fortunate that I was able to get one. Lafayette Radio was located in Jericho, Long Island, and for some very small amount of money, I was able to get a replacement eyepiece. This microscope was, the lenses were dirty, but not damaged, and I was able to clean them up. Luckily, the 40 and the 60 didn't have any dirt or dust inside here. The 5 and the 10 did. So I'm assuming that the owner of this microscope never really used the higher power objectives, just the lower. So maybe when he left this off, dust got in and settled down and just settled onto the lens on the inside. Very difficult to clean that out. But I was able to disassemble these and clean them and reassemble them. Very fortunate that it worked out okay. These I didn't touch because it's far too complicated for me to do. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I consider this microscope kind of a rare find.